And you sit in meetings, and you know, you pick the brain, you begin to glean from the people above you, you know, what you do and what you don't do. Oh. And then, by the way, you write and you get notes, and that's how you learn. It's grueling, but in a good way.
Okay.
I have a question that was it's kind of related to about four of us here in this call and series work as well. We've all developed and written episodes for a series that we came up with called Soul Shadows, and it's kind of a Tales from the Crypt, Twilight Zone type thing. And a lot of the episodes fall into the supernatural realm. Some of them go more into the gore side. I mean, if it was something that was ever going to be picked up and filmed as written, it would probably be on cable. Mm-hmm. I wrote an episode myself that takes place at the, quarantine zone at Chernobyl. so it's probably it would cost a lot of money to make, but some of the stuff is pretty expensive. I mean, just to get something like that out there and read by people, I mean, what kind of recommendations would you make, in that regard?
Let me tell you what you're up against. The reason anthology television really isn't, great anthology television used to exist. And one of the things is that it was expensive, because you didn't have a lot of existing assets that you could carry over from week to week. I mean, certainly, you had sets you could rebuild and repaint and everything, but when you get a show up and running, you've got standing sets. That helps greatly.
Definitely.
Cast. Every week you gotta cast anew.
That's cast, right.
Audience investment. Every week, the audience, they like to know who they're watching, who they're tuning in to see, who they are invested in emotionally. So those are the kinds of things that networks, these are some of the ways they think in terms of dealing with a show that every week deals with entirely new characters. Now, it doesn't mean they don't make them. I know Sci-Fi, they did The Outer Limits a while ago. Gosh, what else?
But Ron, what about actually Tales from the Crypt or Masters of Horror, which are very successful shows on cable networks?
Tales from the Crypt was
made 3 movies came off of it.
Well, but also that was put together by some powerhouse people.
Sure, definitely. I understand that, yes.
Also based on a comic book.
Yeah. What was the other series you mentioned?
Masters of Horror.
No, Masters of Horror. Masters of Horror was done by a company called Industry Entertainment, and what they had done is pre-sold they got all their funding from Europe. They came up with the ideas. They got together some talented directors who had done horror or sci-fi, and they pre-sold it in Europe. So whether, they showed it here on cable, I think.
Yeah.
Is it cable?
Yeah. Showtime, right?
Showtime, yes. And obviously DVDs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and DVDs. So those were a smart investment. They were guaranteed of making their money back and then some. By the way, Tales from the Crypt was not a success in first run. In DVD, maybe, but those were extremely expensive half hours to produce, about $2 million a half hour.
Oh yeah, I could imagine that they were
They're expensive. Classic though, aren't they? I mean, we all know of them. Everybody knows about Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Whether it's successful or not, I mean, we all know about that.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of my thing. I know about Tales from the Crypt. I know, all the old Twilight Zone, Night Gallery, Tales from the Dark Side, Monsters.
Sure,
I mean, all those off the beaten path shows that were like that.
That's also just us too.
Yeah.
Average Joe may not know them as well as we do because,
I disagree, Michael. Stuff. I think everybody knows about that.
Well,
I'm not Michael, Jeff.
That's George.
Oh, sorry, George. I'm sorry, George.
Hi, Jeff.
I'm sorry.
Here's the thing, though, guys. The last time that was tried successfully, anthology horror was technically not an anthology, and that was on the WB Supernatural. Okay. But Supernatural had a string, had a thread with the two brothers looking for their father. And something weird had happened, and it always took them to a weird place, and it was actually very well done. I watched some episodes in the first season. So that's how they did anthology without doing it.
They had PG rating also.
Yes.
Like the X-Files. The X-Files did the same thing.
Yes.
To give you the short version of what we've done, it's called Soul Shadows. There is there's a main character named Tanis, and basically what she does is she collects these objects. She finds them one way or another, and each one of these objects represents a person's soul. And, they pretty much died when this object was in their possession. And, there's a slight intro with that character. Then it goes into the story and how things basically go down with that person. And, there's a quick ending. So, I mean, it's kind of... It's
anthology. That means she's the Crypt Keeper. That's
absolutely.
Exactly.
She's the Crypt Keeper.
Yes, she is.
But
yes,
anyway, Ron, since we're getting low on time here, I had a question that I'm sure everybody's going to want to know the answer to. And that is what's it like making a living as a writer? Is it
great question.
Are you happy that you did it, or do you have like regrets about doing it, or what's it like?
I don't want to know the answer to that.
The honest answer is there are days when you're on a show and you're happy and it's incredible and the critics love you. I can't believe I get paid for it. That's the exception and not the rule. There are other days when you want to be a pipe fitter. There are stars that life is too short that you've worked with. No names, Roseanne Barr. That are just horrible people. Suck the life out of a room.
How about Bruce Willis?
Bruce was a pro.
Good. Excellent.
He showed up. He always did the work. As a person, you never really get inside. On the other hand, his co-star could be terrible.
I understand. I agree with you. Yeah.
And so there were, that was a very turbulent set. Now, I loved doing it though. I still loved, I grew so much as a writer. I learned so much about subtext and writing emotionally and using theme. None of this stuff I did in sitcom. So that was a terrific experience. But then, look, I did a show with Jeremy Piven, who is very close to the Antichrist himself. And it was not
my kind of person.
Didn't show up because of a bad seafood reaction?
Yeah, it was not a pleasant experience. It was anxious. It was swimming upstream, and my partner
like a salmon.
Yeah, I couldn't think of spawn. It was not fun. I didn't like it.
So you have a lot of days where you go in and it feels like work. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, and I can totally see that. I can totally understand that because I would think that, you're not going to go in every day. It's going to be, sunshine and roses and, little leprechauns with pots of gold coming out of their asses. It's going to be, it's going to be a job.
Well, I'll tell you one of the coolest things though. This is one of my coolest stories. And I'm so glad I got to do this.